Good morning, everyone. It's Rabbi Akiva Males, and I hope you're well. Today is Friday. It's January 15th. We're getting ready for Parshas Va'era. I want to share with you a short Dvar Torah this morning, something that I found absolutely fascinating. There's a halachic discussion. You'll find it in the Shulchan Aruch. It's in Siman Kuf Aleph, 101. And it tells us that when we daven our Shmona Esrei, we're supposed to articulate the words. We're not supposed to just say them in our minds and in our hearts, but we should actually, in a very soft manner, we should speak them just so we can hear them with our own ears. Our neighbors should not hear them. We don't want to disturb anyone else's tefillos, but loud enough that I should hear them myself, and that will enhance my own kavanah. That's what the Shulchan Aruch tells us in Kuf Aleph, and you'll see the Mishnah Berurah there. It brings down some of the reasons for this, why we don't want to go too loud. We've got to find that exact medium, that loud enough that the one who's davening should be able to hear the words, but not loud enough that the people next to us, the people around us, should hear us. We don't want to disturb anyone else's tefillah. That's the halacha there. So the question is raised, and some of the achronim deal with this. What if my normal volume, how I express my tefillos, let's say, put a number on it. Let's say I bring it up to level number 3. Just quiet enough that I could hear it, nobody else. Let's say that's how I normally daven. But that day in shul, there's a lot of noise. Let's say, I don't know where you would find this, but just outside the shul windows, which are all open because of COVID, outside the window, there are dump trucks coming and putting down new earth, and there are tractors roaring, and therefore it is noisier than usual. Again, I don't know where you'd find such a place, but assuming that was to be the case, would I have to raise my voice? Would I continue during my Shemona Esrei to articulate my tefillah as loud as I normally would under normal circumstances? Or because the volume around me is higher, does that necessitate that I should express my own tefillos, my own prayers at a higher volume? Again, not to disturb my neighbors, but loud enough that I should be able to hear it, excuse me, given the given circumstances. That's a question that's actually dealt with. And this week, I saw something amazing. I saw that someone brought this question up to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky in Bnei Brak in Israel, and he looked at the person and he said, what's the problem? It's a Beferish Sifsei Chachamim in Parshas Va'era. It's straight out, the Sifsei Chachamim, that's that super commentary on Rashi that you'll find throughout Chumash. He addresses this right in Parshas Va'era. What? Where in Parshas Va'era? Where does this come up? So they wrote this down, and I found this absolutely amazing. And here's what it's going on. In Shemos, Paraches, chapter 8, that's where we find Makas Tzvardeya, the plague with the Tzvardeya, the frogs. And we know that Paro gives in. He says, I can't take this anymore. And he begs Moshe, please daven to Hashem to take away these frogs. And the Pasuk tells us in Pasuk Ches, again, so it's Paraches, Pasuk Ches, chapter 8, verse 8. The Pasuk says, Vayetze Moshe v'Aaron me'im Paro. They left Paro's presence. Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem. And Moshe cries out. He raises his voice. He screams out to Hashem, Al Dvarat Tzvardim Asher Sama Paro. The matter pertaining to those frogs which God had placed upon Paro. So the Sifsei Chachamim asks the question, Makshima Olam. He says, many people are bothered by the following question. Lomashina HaKosab Tzvardim Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem. Why by Makas Tzvardeya? That's the one Makkah, the one plague that the Torah says, this expression that Moshe cried out, Vayitzak, that he screamed to Hashem. By every other Makkah, it says that Moshe, he davened, Vayetar, he entreated Hashem, that he asked Hashem, please do me a favor, take away this Makkah. Why specifically by Tzvardeya, by frogs, by the plague of frogs, does the Torah use this expression of Vayitzak, that he screamed, that he called out, that he cried out? And the Sifsei Chachamim answers, such a logical answer. V'yesh lomar, mishum damrinan, because what's the halacha that we're familiar with? Hamispalel tzarich lashmiya laznev mashimotzi bepiv. The one who's davening should hear with his own or her own ears what it is that's being expressed. And what do we know about Makas Tzvardeya? They were making an incredible racket. They were making a lot of noise. Some of the Mefarshim, the commentaries, learn that the issue with Makas Tzvardeya was like psychological warfare. It was sleep deprivation. You read about this like at Guantanamo Bay and how the CIA would interrogate prisoners, that they would blast music at them for hours on end to deprive them from having any peace of mind and any kind of sleep. So Tzvardeya, according to many of our Mefarshim, was doing just that. They were making a huge amount of noise. It was a real racket. And as a result of that, Moshe, as a result of that, had to raise his voice when he was davening, because he knows the halacha, that one who's davening is supposed to hear what he or she is expressing. Therefore, Moshe had to raise his voice when it came to davening to Hashem to remove the plague of the Tzfardim, because the Tzfardim were making such a noise in their own right. Moshe had, that's why the expression of Vayitzak, that he raised his voice, he cried out, appears only by Tzfardeya and not by any of the other Makos. Very creative answer, but it's a very logical answer, what the Sisei Chachamim says here. And I thought it was amazing that here's what Reb Chaim Kanievsky does. Someone asked him, do you have an answer to this halachic question that comes up about if there's more noise than usual in shul, do you have to raise your voice louder? And he says, sure. He goes, but it's not my own logic, my own idea. It's Befer Sifsei Chachamim. He says this in Parshas Va'era, and that's what he quoted there. So to all of us who are davening at shul, and there is construction going on, Baruch Hashem, there is construction. It might be making a little bit more noise than usual during our Shemona Esrei. So we know from the Sifsei Chachamim, we would raise our voice just enough that we'll be able to hear it. But again, we don't want to disturb any of our neighbors, anyone who is around us. I want to conclude with the following idea. This whole discussion is whether we need to raise our voice so we should hear our tefillos, because there might be noise around us. We want to hear it to increase our kavanah. But what we should always remember is it's never necessary to raise our voice for God to hear. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Shomei Tefillah, as we say every day in our Shemona Esrei. Hashem hears our tefillos, and we don't need to scream out to Hashem for Hashem to hear it. We might have to raise our voice for ourselves to hear our tefillos, to increase our kavanah. But all of us should rest assured that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Shomei Tefillah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears our tefillos. It's our fervent hope and a prayer that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should not just hear our tefillos, he should respond to our tefillos, bring an end to this pandemic, and share a refuah shalema with all those who are in need of one. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.